Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can start the show, so if you want to confirm that it's on Facebook.
I can confirm that right now.
And our recording is good.
Not yet, but
Yep.
yep, it's live on Facebook.
Okay. So I'm going to start with a 3-minute timer then.
Live on Huron Hay.
So Mark will be coming to you in 3 minutes.
Is this the part where it would be really clumsy if I fainted or something? Good evening, and welcome to the Federal All Candidates Evening. This event is organized by the Huron Chamber of Commerce, Faux Studio, and the Staysh, Huron-Perth Association of Realtors, and Lakeshore United Church. We would also like to thank the Chamber advocate sponsors, Libro Credit Union and Bruce Power. And our friends and sponsors, Artex Signs and Graphics and 920 CKNX. I would like to offer a special thank you to our venue, Faux Studios, and all its volunteers behind the cameras, along with Sandra Bilson of Huron County Toastmasters, who will be timing the event. Welcome to everyone at home watching on our website, on Facebook, and on Channel 1. Tonight we are joined by 5 of the candidates participating for the electoral district of Huron-Bruce. We welcome them here tonight to help us be informed voters as we participate in the democratic process. It is now my privilege to introduce our moderator for the evening. She is the face of the Staysh and master of interviewing people who help shape our community, from politicians to fundraisers, athletes to academics, and everyone in between. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Roz Elliott.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Roz, and thank you, Mark, and the Huron Chamber of Commerce for this opportunity tonight. Before you tonight, we have all 5 candidates seeking your vote here in Huron-Bruce. In the interest of transparency, public health measures are being observed here at the Staysh. Everyone inside the studio is masked behind the scenes, and campaign staff are observing from outside on TV screens. Candidates inside are joining 6 feet apart at tables. We're also pleased to be able to have candidates join remotely by Zoom so all views can be heard and ensure a balanced debate. An important role tonight, as Mark said, is the role of timekeeper. If our candidates extend beyond their allotment, Sandra will cue me to take back the floor and ensure an even share of time for everyone. Well, let's make our way to introductions. Our candidates appear alphabetically, and we'll introduce them now in that order. Here in the studio, a warm welcome to Jan Johnstone. She's the candidate for the new Democratic Party. Jan is a familiar face in the political arena, having represented the NDP most recently as the provincial candidate in 2018. Jan is an education leader and community builder with deep roots in Huron-Bruce, where she and her husband have lived for over 30 years and raised 3 daughters. She has worked locally as a social worker in healthcare, child welfare, and community development, and has been a CUPE member. Jan serves as a school trustee for Kincardine and Huron-Kinloss, vice chair for Blue Water District School Board, and director of the Ontario Public School Board Association. Welcome, Jan, tonight. Next, we have Ben Lobb of the Conservative Party of Canada. Ben is seeking his 5th term as MP for Huron-Bruce. Ben first took the seat in 2008, following a long run by Liberal MP Paul Steckley. In the 41st Parliament, Ben served as chair of the Standing Committee on Health. He has also previously chaired the Government Auto Caucus and serves as a member in the Rural, Mining, Housing, and Nuclear Caucus. He has also been a member on the Standing Committee of Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disability, Public Safety and National Security, Veterans Affairs, and Agriculture and Food. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks, Ross.
Next up, we have James Rice. He's the candidate for the Liberal Party. He's also in studio with us, and after receiving his Juris Doctor degree at the University of Windsor's Law School, James has held several roles in the legal system, including assisting children with severe disabilities at the Ministry of Community and Social Services. He has also served as a judicial clerk for the Supreme Court of Northwest Territories while in law school. James is currently the Assistant Crown Attorney at the Ontario Ministry of the Attorney General. As a former Crown ward, James grew up through the child welfare system, and after aging out of care, he joined the board of directors for the Bruce Gray Child and Family Services. James is born and raised in the Kincardine area. Welcome to you, James.
Thanks, Ross.
Continuing alphabetically, we're now joined by Zoom by independent candidate Justin L. Smith. Justin began an area. He left the area to attend Laurentian University, where he studied chemistry, and then transferred to Cambrian College to study in the Police Foundations program. He also holds an honors degree in law and justice specialization. Justin returned to Goderich and is currently store manager of Parsons Used Furniture in Goderich and is a representative of Primerica Financial Services. Justin is a member of the Canadian Coalition of Firearm Rights and a supporter of the Justice Center of Constitutional Freedoms. Welcome, Justin, tonight. And our final candidate is Jack Stecho. He is the candidate for the People's Party of Canada, also joining by Zoom. Jack may well be the youngest candidate or one of running federally in Canada, having just turned 18 in April of this year. Jack is a graduate of St. Anne's Catholic Secondary School in Clinton, and he was in the French immersion program there. Jack grew up primarily in Goderich, yet has also lived in Exeter and Marathon. He is honored to have received the Senior Constable Bruce Crew Award for contribution, compassion, and good contact on and off the court. He's a longtime hockey player since the age of 6 and currently plays for the Goderich Flyers and even abroad in Poland. Earlier, just now, the candidates drew for the order of opening comments. For fairness, when we come to closing, we'll reverse that order. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for opening comments, and we will begin first with Jan Johnstone for the NDP. Jan.
Thank you. My name is Jan Johnstone, your New Democratic Party candidate running to be the next MP for Huron-Bruce. I would like to thank the Goderich Chamber of Commerce for organizing this all-candidates debate and Fox Pop Studio for stepping up and providing a new debate venue. I would like to recognize that we were gathered here today on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. My family and I have lived in Huron-Bruce for over 30 years and live in the town of Kincardine. My husband Gord worked for Bruce Power and we have 3 girls. My Scottish heritage serves me well, and I am on the executive of the Kincardine Scottish Festival and Highland Games, an award-winning festival that lasts 3 days and welcomes thousands of visitors from all over North America. As a social worker, I have worked in both Huron and Bruce counties as in child welfare, hospital, community-based mental health care, community development work, and also business improvement within the private sector. My passion for public education grows from my dedication to service to others. I'm an elected school board trustee for over 20 years and vice chair of the Blue Water District School Board. We are responsible for a yearly budget of over $200 million and are the second largest employer in Huron-Bruce. Many people know me as an ardent supporter of public education. I have worked with parents, community leaders, education partners, and students because I care deeply about children, regardless of their background, deserve a chance to succeed in life. Overall, I've dedicated my life to improving the lives of those who call Huron-Bruce home, and I'm ready to take that dedication to Ottawa. This election, we have a chance to build back our society better than ever before. If we want different results, we need to make different choices. It's time to do better. Elect Jan Johnstone for Huron-Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And now we will turn to James Rice from the Liberal Party. James?
Thanks, Roz. Good evening, everybody at home, everybody watching from home today. Thank you to the Huron County Chamber of Commerce for organizing this debate, to FOPOP for providing us with our venue, and to all the partners that were previously mentioned for making this night possible. We're only a week till Election Day, and events like this are crucial for you to be able to make an informed decision. As was previously said, I'm James Rice, and I'm proud to be here as your Liberal candidate, running to be your Member of Parliament here in Huron-Bruce. We've all been through a lot the last 18 months. We have a unique opportunity now to reevaluate what we stand for as a society and move forward for everyone. I have born and raised through the Kincardine area, and I've been proud to call Bruce County my home. I've grown up through many places in Bruce County because I grew up through the child welfare system, eventually becoming a Crown Ward. Now, while doing that, it was a very turbulent time in my life, of course. I experienced many of the things that vulnerable people in our society deal with all the time. Homelessness, food insecurity, trauma. These all formed the person I am today and help shape the perspective that I look at things through. Because of good government policy and good government programs that we provide to people in this country, I had a real chance at success and was pulled out of poverty. I went to the University of Guelph after finishing high school, where I got a degree in criminal justice and public policy, and then a Juris Doctor law degree from the University of Windsor. I now work as a lawyer, and I'm a Crown attorney, which means I do criminal prosecutions. My background and experiences give me a lens of a society that is just and empowering for all. And that's something that government and I should be striving for all the time. Canadians have seen through these last turbulent 18 months that they can count on the Liberal Party and the government that we formed to have their backs when things get tough. Firstly, we have the Canada Child Benefit, which has pulled 435,000 children, kids like I was, out of poverty, including over 10,000 families here in Huron-Bruce. We've taken real action to protect our environment and our climate for generations to come, and lower our greenhouse gas emissions to make that possible. We've undertook the Canada Housing Strategy to help ensure everybody has a safe, affordable place to call home. And during the pandemic, we took prompt action to save people's jobs, their homes, and their livelihoods. Because of our government action promptly early in the pandemic, Canada is now the most vaccinated country in the G7. So we've made a lot of progress, but there's more work to do. We can't afford to go backwards at this time. We need to keep moving forwards. To make sure we do that, vote James Rice on September 20th. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, James. And now we turn to Justin Smith, independent candidate. Justin.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for tonight to bring us all together. My name is Justin Smith, and I'm running as an independent candidate, no party affiliation. I was born and raised in Goderich, well, Huron Haven, just north of Goderich. I have a bachelor's degree in law and justice, and that's what I believe in, the law and justice, as well as freedom. As I said, I believe in freedom. Freedom from an overreaching government who is power hungry and wants to spend all the money they can get their hands on. I will advocate to completely remove the carbon tax and any carbon-based schemes because it has been shown not to work and other countries have abandoned them as well. I will lower personal and business and farm taxes so that everyone can keep more of their hard-earned money. I would end budgeted subsidies and corporate bailouts, giving money to multi-million and multi-billion dollar corporations like the banks, Bombardier, Lobb, and so many others. And since we are a rural riding, we have a lot of farmers, hunters, sport shooters, and others who want to use their firearms lawfully and safely, but can't because of illogical fallacies. I would reverse the order in council that banned over 1,500 firearms, consolidate all of our firearm laws into one comprehensive piece of legislation with more specific definitions. Licenses would be valid for 10 years. I would increase magazine capacity so that competitive shooters no longer have a disadvantage against other countries. Classify firearms based only on not looks, allow the discharge of all firearms on a property if it is safe and the municipality allows it, such as on farmland, and ensure that any changes to firearm laws are done with experts and not lobbyists. I would expand our nuclear generating capabilities and prioritize solutions that are actually practical in order to make Canada's air, water, and soil cleaner. This would also include clean drinking water to remote First Nations communities. I would ensure the government respects and follows the Constitution and Charter, as would post-secondary schools, by not giving any federal funding if they have been shown to violate the Charter of any of its students or faculty. Discrimination should be penalized no matter where it takes place. I would phase out foreign development aid and instead focus on international aid towards emergency humanitarian crises, like helping after an earthquake or tornado. And coming back to my support of freedom, I am fighting for the freedom from all COVID measures that have caused so much strife and division because they are unconstitutional. The problem is the government keeps coming up with new rules and mandates which are slowing the progress back to school and work. Everyone should have the right to choose what is best for him or her, and I oppose any and all mask, vaccine, and vaccine passport mandates and lockdowns. If people want to continue life as they've been doing the past year and a half or so, they should be allowed to, the same as those who want to get life back to normal. But again, it should be up to each individual and business, not the government, to decide. The government's role is to protect our rights, not dictate to us. I won't be a paper candidate who doesn't show up to campaign for nearly all debates. As an independent, you tell me what you want, and I fight for it, not the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And now we turn to Conservative incumbent Ben Lobb.
Thanks very much, Roz. Thank you to the Huron Chamber of Commerce tonight. Thank you to Heather Boa, Roz, Mark, and a tremendous effort at Full Pop Media here to put this debate on. A week ago, or just a few days ago, we were to have the debate at the United Church here in town, and things didn't work out. So we have the debate here on short notice, and so thank you to everybody for being flexible, and hopefully the people at home feel that this is a great debate tonight. And in pandemic times, COVID times, and limited seating inside, hopefully you find this is a good format to take on a discussion and a debate. This is our 5th debate of the election, and as far as I can tell, I think the other candidates would agree. They've been very positive. The candidates have brought their positions, and I think that's a great format for us to have a discussion in. A new Conservative government will work with Canadians to build a better Canada, a more prosperous Canada. We will invest in rural infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, community centers. And probably most importantly, we've seen in the last 18 months, we'll get high-speed internet to every house by 2025. We'll take immediate action to help the hardest hit sectors, rebuild Main Street by assisting small business and providing incentives to invest in, rebuild, and start new businesses. We'll create all opportunity in all sectors of the economy in all parts of the country. It's a plan to secure Canada's recovery from the pandemic, to get the economy on track and to bring jobs back and to get spending under control. To tackle high prices, especially home prices, we see that each and every day, and fight inflation. Everybody talks about that when we're out door knocking, the high prices of groceries and all the other expenses that go along in your monthly budget. To get serious about mental health, the mental health crisis in our country. We hear about this every single day. We will increase health transfers to the provinces so they can deliver the very important universal health care delivery. And we'll secure our independence from other countries for the things we need in an emergency. I look forward to tonight's debate on September 20th. I ask you to vote Ben Lobb, vote Conservative. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. And now rounding out our 5 candidates is Jack Stecho from the People's Party of Canada. Welcome, Jack.
Thanks, Roz, and I wanted to thank the Huron Chamber of Commerce for hosting and the opportunity to speak tonight. I live in Goderich, and I have lived in Goderich essentially my entire life. I went to St. Mary's Catholic Elementary School and St. Anne's Catholic Secondary School and graduated from the French immersion programs from both schools. Because of the last 18 months, this election is one of the most important in Canada's history. I joined the People's Party of Canada because their platform spoke to me the most. The People's Party of Canada was founded by Maxime Bernier in 2018. Maxime Bernier is the former Minister of Industry, Minister of State, and Minister of Foreign Affairs. Maxime Bernier does not flip-flop on issues like we've seen other leaders do throughout this entire campaign. I believe Maxime Bernier is ready to be the next Prime Minister. The People's Party of Canada was founded on 4 principles: fairness, responsibility, respect, and most importantly this election, personal freedom. Despite starting 3 years ago, the People's Party of Canada already polls higher than the Greens and the Bloc Québécois federally consistently. The People's Party of Canada is the fastest growing party in Canada, and that has a lot to do with the last 18 months. The People's Party of Canada wants to make things better for every Canadian and every Canadian family. The People's Party of Canada will do that by cutting taxes, respecting legal firearm owners, and a rational response to the COVID-19 pandemic, respecting people's rights and their freedoms. And the People's Party of Canada will put Canada first, not globalism, Canada first. On September 20th, I ask that you look into the People's Party of Canada and vote for the PPC. Thank you.
Jack, thank you very much. Well, now we are underway with the questions. That's the fun part, so let's get on with it. Well, where did tonight's questions come from? Well, they came from you ahead of tonight's debate. The questions have been scrutinized to ensure they relate to federal issues and grouped for appropriately liked themes. So from a bucket of these questions, 6 have been drawn for tonight, and you and our candidates will hear about them at the same time. Questions may be directed to a specific candidate, and other candidates will be afforded the opportunity to comment as well. In any case, though, they each will receive up to 2 minutes to make their point. If the question hasn't been directed to any specific candidate, well, guess what? I get that privilege to pick the order, and I'm going to be doing that tonight. So our first question, Justin, since you addressed this a little bit in your opening comment, I thought you might want to lead us off on the first question, which is, where does each party stand on the mandatory double vaccination issue? Justin. And we're not getting sound on Justin. 1 second.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There you go. We'll start the clock. Don't worry there, Justin. All set.
All right, thank you. Yes, I am opposed to vaccine passports and the environment of coercion and unethical practices surrounding the experimental COVID vaccines. Not to mention they are unconstitutional, and these measures cannot be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. There are more deadlier illnesses in Canada that the government has ignored and continues to ignore. Any vaccine that is not first scientifically proven to eradicate or render relatively harmless a disease or virus should not be mandatory in any situation. It should be up to each individual if he or she wants to receive the vaccine or treatment, and nothing beyond that. and an individual should have the right to discontinue additional vaccine boosters or treatments if the individual previously chose to take them, if they decide it is no longer beneficial to them. Everyone should be allowed to have access to informative, peer-reviewed data that is clearly and concisely explained in a language that everyone can understand. No one should be subjected to an unfair sanctions, denied access to medical care or services, or threatened with work termination because they stood up for their personal body autonomy and democratic right to choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. James, would you like to add any comments to this?
Thanks, Roz. So I'll start off by saying I am 100% in support of mandatory vaccinations. The federal government, led by the Liberal Party, introduced a federal vaccine mandate. So any planes, trains, interprovincial ferries, and people in the public service need to be vaccinated. We'll also support the provinces in our plan to implement their own vaccination mandates, and we're even doing that here in Ontario, starting later in September. So these COVID measures are not unconstitutional. Again, that's a legal opinion from a lawyer, but also something that the courts all across Canada have found. The science is clear that these vaccines are safe and effective. Health Canada is known as one of the most stringent regulators of medicines in the world. So if Health Canada has approved it, it's safe and effective, therefore not experimental. 80% of Canadians, almost 80% of Canadians, have made the responsible choice to become double vaccinated. It's now time that those of us who have done so can move to some semblance of normal. And for those reasons, I'm very much in support of further mandatory vaccinations.
Okay, thank you, James. Jack, what do you have to say about mandatory double vaccination issue, Jack?
Well, the People's Party of Canada is not pro-vax or anti-vax. The People's Party of Canada's plan with COVID is a rational approach that respects your rights and your freedoms. We will promote protection of the most vulnerable, those with comorbidities, and those advanced age seniors. And we will guarantee the freedoms of Canadians to make decisions based on informed consent, and we will reject coercion and discrimination against those who make a personal medical decision. The People's Party of Canada will repeal vaccine mandates for civil servants and federal workers. We will repeal vaccine passports for travelers. We will repeal regular mandated testing. We will repeal vaccine passports and support individuals in court that choose to challenge those. We will support provinces protecting the most vulnerable, but we will stop bailing out provinces that are causing these economically destructive lockdowns. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Jan, what would you like to add?
Yes, as the fourth wave of the pandemic intensifies, public health experts are urging people to get vaccinated, and kids are heading back to school. The NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh, introduced a comprehensive plan to increase vaccination rates, help families through the pandemic, and also protect healthcare workers. We know that families are worried, and especially with kids just going back to school. I think it's also very easy to divide people, but we need to bring people together to achieve our common goals, and we're ready to fight against this fourth wave alongside other Canadians. To help Canadians get through this fourth wave, we are committing $1 billion in targeted support to ramp up vaccinations and to partner with provinces and territories to create targeted, inclusive programs that will remove the remaining barriers that help those who still are unvaccinated get their shots. We're also looking at quickly implementing a national vaccine passport to allow fully vaccinated Canadians to not only travel internationally, but also continue to go to work, school, and public spaces. We're also going to reverse Trudeau's cuts to pandemic supports and extend them. And finally, we're going to strengthen laws to protect healthcare workers and those seeking care from harassment and violent attacks. We can't end this pandemic if Canadians seeking care and those who are delivering it feel unsafe. We have a responsibility to protect those who are protecting us, and we must remove all barriers, including the fear, and this is really quite genuine, fear of violence and intimidation from the path to vaccination. We can defeat this, but we have to work together, and we're going to fight with Canadians every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Ben, the last word on double vaccination goes to you.
Thanks very much for the question, Roz. First of all, I will say that I am double vaccinated, and I thought it was important as a member of Parliament and a candidate out on the campaign trail, seeing hundreds of people every day, that I should be vaccinated and provide that safety buffer between myself and the people that I'm talking to on a daily basis. The Conservative Party's plan is a fair and balanced plan, It does not have a vaccine passport. It asks for a proof of vaccination, which if you have your shots, you will have that. And if you aren't vaccinated, then you can provide a negative rapid test to show that you are negative and don't have COVID. I've talked to countless people about our platform and our policy in regards to this area, and people think that it is fair and balanced. And we are over 80% in Huron-Bruce, and we're over 80% in Ontario, and I think that's very, very good results. And I will add, what we're talking about here tonight are areas of federally regulated industries, workplaces, et cetera. We are talking about airlines, airports, Via Rail, facility like Bruce Power, CP Rail, CN Rail. We're not talking about the grocery store. That's a different area of jurisdiction. So we are talking about federally regulated areas. It is a fair and balanced approach. And the one thing we can't do is we know that employers need workers. We're short 1 million employees, at least, in this country. And the last thing we need to do is start firing employees because they are not vaccinated. We need to give them time. If they can prove that they have a negative test, that should be good enough for the workplace and allow them time to do more research and more study. We need to unite this country. We are deeply divided at this time. We need to move forward, unite together, and build this country out from the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. That's one question down, 5 views heard. And thank you for those who submitted that question along that theme. We're going to roll right into question number 2. It also is pandemic related. Special attention must be placed on policies that facilitate equitable recovery for small businesses, communities, and sectors that have been severely impacted by the pandemic. That includes women, Indigenous people, racialized groups, and businesses in tourism, retail, and food services sectors. What strategy and partnerships would you and your government put in place to facilitate recovery, and how would you ensure that Huron County's businesses can recover from this pandemic? Let's start with you, Jack.
Perfect. Thanks for that important question. Yeah, that's very important here. The next 18 months and beyond are very important after what we experienced and after what small businesses have been through. It's been a very, very tough 18 months for them. And a lot of them have had to shut down because of these lockdowns. So what the People's Party of Canada is going to do next is we're going to go back to normal. We're going to let those that are living in fear continue to stay home, lock themselves down, but we are going to allow those that want to live reopen their small businesses, and without restrictions, without guidelines, without capacity limits. And that will really allow those businesses to have prosperity back again, and they'll reopen and they'll make money again, and that's exactly what we want. And we're also having a jobs crisis as well. So we need to get people back to work as soon as possible. We need everything reopened in the job sector. And we also need to make sure that, we're going back to normal for these businesses, because that's what they've needed after these last 18 months. And a lot of them have shut down, and that's very unfortunate, even in Huron-Bruce, as tourism is a big part of Huron-Bruce. And we're not seeing tourists because of the COVID restrictions that the Conservatives provincially placed on Ontario. So I think that with the People's Party of Government not supporting provincial Conservative lockdown measures continually and in the past, we've been against them since day one, and we will allow small businesses to flourish. And we will also cut taxes for small businesses, as that is part of our Canada First platform. We will cut taxes for small businesses as well, putting Canada first. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Jan, how are we going to help with equitable recovery in Huron County for those severely impacted?
Thank you very much for the question, Roz. The pandemic has really impacted small businesses especially hard, and even more so in Huron-Bruce, where many businesses rely on the tourist season. That's why the NDP will make sure that small businesses' wages and rent subsidies continue until businesses can fully reopen. To help small businesses get people back to work, we'll put in place a long-term hiring bonus to pay the employer portion of EI and CPP for new or rehired staff. Also, the NDP will also invest in regional economic development agencies and provide economic support for rural areas to create jobs in tourism and community development sectors. Through a dedicated rebuilding package, the NDP will provide much-needed support to performing arts, theater, festivals, and other arts that the pandemic has more severely impacted? Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And Ben, I turn to you now. What strategies do you have in mind to help with an equitable recovery for Huron businesses?
Okay, well, first of all, I would say our entire platform, its name is Canada's Recovery Plan. So first of all, it's recognizing that we're behind the eight ball here financially. We've spent a lot of money over the last year and a half, and even before that, the previous 4 years. So we have a significant deficit and a huge debt, so we need to work our way through that. And really, it starts with the job surge. We have 1 million jobs to add to the economy. There's a number of different ways that we can do that. There are countless unfilled positions throughout Huron-Bruce and across the country, and we need to connect those workers with the businesses that are looking to recruit these workers. And one of the ways is through a wage grant, recognizing that some workers have been out of the workforce for over 18 months plus. They may need some retraining to bring them back in, and so we're offering employers a grant to help offset some of their wages to do that. In addition, we have some other investments to make as well. We have to connect workers into the food processing sector, which is vital to the Ontario economy and the agriculture economy. We need to add 30,000 workers just to that one sector alone. In addition to that, we need housing. If we have workers, we need housing here in Huron-Bruce. We need housing of all scales and of all development. We need housing. There's a million homes to be built in our federal plan, as well as incentives for developers, builders, investors to build rental homes, apartments, et cetera. So we're looking forward to that. And another one as well, I think is vitally important to get everybody back to work, is a childcare program, a program that helps offset the costs for childcare, daycare. Anybody that has young kids knows how expensive it is when you add your mortgage, car payment, and then daycare costs as well. We're offering a tax credit up to $6,000, which is refundable, and that will help everybody, all parents, get back to work. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Ben. Justin, what are your thoughts on helping those Huron businesses and those severely impacted?
In short, I would get life back to normal again. So I would end all the COVID mandates and stop all government subsidies. So in other words, stop spending money to get us out of this. I would get our economy and lives going again. People want to work, people want to make money. So that's what we need to focus on. The government mandates and lockdowns played a substantial role in the negative impact of COVID on our nation. The problem is the government keeps coming up with new rules and mandates, which are slowing the progress back to work. I'll reverse the decisions made and will fight to never have them again, because each individual is intelligent enough to make the best decision for him or herself. We have reasonable and sensible safety measures already in place, and that's enough. Getting back to work and lowering taxes. So both personal, business, and farm taxes lowered means more people are working and keeping that money in their pockets that they can spend elsewhere and continue that ball rolling. That's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. And we'll leave it with James to round up question number 2. James, what would you do in the Liberal Party?
Thanks, Roz. So firstly, in order to recover from the pandemic, we need to beat it first. So we'll do additional investments, additional supports to make sure we beat COVID-19 once and for all. We've already recovered 92% of the jobs lost to the pandemic, but we know that there's a gap. And we've extended the important pandemic supports like the wage subsidy, the Canada Emergency Business Account, into March 2022. So I've been speaking with people at the doors, though, about the gap that creates. And I spoke with Kendra in Wingham, who works in an industry that's uniquely hit by the pandemic. So supporting these people and supporting people who still need the government's assistance is at the forefront of my mind and of the government's mind as we move forward. We've created a unique tourism fund to help people in Huron-Bruce. I know that's a huge part of our economy here. So to help the tourism industry respond to the pandemic and survive it, we've brought in that important fund. In our plan, we'll provide EI supports for self-employed and gig workers. We'll build 1.4 million new homes and create 1 million new jobs, partly through investing in green jobs and technology. But the main core of our economic recovery plan is our $10 a day childcare plan. We know that a huge barrier to people, especially here in Huron-Bruce, is inaccessible, unaffordable childcare. I know that myself. I have an almost 2-year-old, and finding childcare in Huron-Bruce is very difficult. And when you can find it, it's almost always not affordable. So our $10 a day childcare plan, which we've signed with 8 out of 10 provinces and territories, including Liberal, Conservative, and NDP provincial governments across the country, is the best plan to do that. Moms, we know that you're disproportionately affected by that. We know that you've been carrying us on your shoulders, and your shoulders are getting tired. We're here to help you with that. Well, the Conservatives would rip up that $10 a day childcare plan, and their costed platform makes that clear in favor of a tax credit. The $10 a day childcare plan is the best option to make sure we create spaces and provide the relief Ontario families need now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, James. We are going to roll into question number 3. Take note, Ben, because you're going to lead us off on this one. There is an historic crisis facing our communities, climate change. The recent report released by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change calls on governments around the world to take immediate steps to curb rises in global temperatures. Ben, how would you ensure that Huron County's manufacturing industry and workforce is included in the emergence of clean tech and sustainable innovation? Ben?
Well, first of all, I would say that our plan is a great plan, and it's one that balances the environment and the economy, which I think is really important. Another piece is that our plan meets the 2030 Paris climate numbers, which is also really important that we meet the targets, and it's been peer reviewed and will definitely set Canada on the right track. And instead of just making pronouncements, it will actually deliver results. In regards to the opportunities, I think that was really the question, Roz, was the opportunities that present Huron-Bruce. I mean, we're already participating in that, and we'll continue to participate in that. In addition to that, what we haven't really done, what the government really hasn't done in the last 6 years, is recognize the contribution that agriculture makes in sequestering carbon. And that is going to be one of the key features in our environmental platform. We have a $3 billion fund to that for farmers and woodlot owners that manage their woodlots and sequester carbon, rehabilitation of grasslands, wetlands, and as well regular crop rotations that one would have, and provide value and recognize that, which we haven't done for years. And as well, we're going to invest $1 billion in small modular nuclear reactors. And so you say, what are the opportunities locally? There's a huge opportunity about an hour up the road at Bruce Power, and as well in the larger nuclear industry in Ontario. Small modular reactors, there's a huge opportunity once that technology is fully developed. As well, there's a fly floating around here too. What can Full Pop do about that? As well, I should also mention with nuclear is the medical isotopes. It's not quite in relation to the environment, but it's definitely an offshoot, and the tremendous technology and opportunity in cancer therapy that medical isotopes present. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. And we're going to escort that fly out the back door. That's just not right. That's just not right. Now we're going to move to all the J's. We have all the J's. So let's begin with Jack. Jack, same question. Looking at the manufacturing sector and workforce in Huron County, how are you going to support emergence of clean tech and sustainable innovation?
Great, thanks for the important question, Roz. And when it comes to climate change, I stand fully with my party on this issue. We must reject alarmism and focus on concrete improvements, and reject the billions of dollars spent at home and abroad and put them back in the families of Huron-Bruce's pockets. A People's Party of Canada government will withdraw from the Paris Accord and abandon unrealistic greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Again, as I mentioned, we will stop sending billions of your dollars to developing countries to help them reduce their emissions. We will abolish the liberal government's carbon tax and leave it to provincial government to adopt programs to reduce emissions if they want to, unlike Aaron O'Toole, who recently flip-flopped on his carbon tax stance. We will abolish subsidies for green technology and let private players develop profitable and efficient alternatives. We will invest in adaptation strategies if problems arise as a result of any natural climate change. We will prioritize implementing practical solutions to make Canada's air, water, and soil cleaner, including bringing clean drinking water to remote First Nation communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Okay, I'm going to keep going alphabetically so all my J's know who's coming next. James, you are up next in terms of clean tech and sustainable innovation. What are we looking at in Huron County?
Thanks, Roz. So this issue is at the forefront of my mind all the time. I'm hearing it at the doors from young people, from older people. We need to treat climate change and the climate emergency as much as we've treated the COVID emergency. We need to respond to it the same way. So we've made, our climate plan puts a price on carbon to lower our emissions. It's been proven that using the market to lower the carbon emissions is the most effective way of doing it. Part of that strategy, though, is investing in green jobs and technologies. And as Ben said, up the roadway of Bruce Power, and we're very supportive of the nuclear industry. As Minister Seamus O'Regan said, he's the Minister of Natural Resources in our past government, we don't get to net zero by 2050 without nuclear power, period. And we know that. We're very supportive of that. We need to go further with that research. Small modular reactors are a great new innovation that will lower our greenhouse gas emissions and provide green, reliable electricity to communities that need it. We have invested billions and will invest more in research and technology to find alternatives to what we currently have. Climate economists and climate scientists have endorsed our climate change plan as the best one. However, there are potentially certain gaps here in Huron-Bruce. One example is for farmers who don't yet have a viable alternative to fossil fuels in their operations. At the agricultural debate, I committed to seeking an exception to them for that as my own policy within my own government. And I stand by that, and that's something that I would do on behalf of Huron-Bruce farmers. On behalf of our industry, we need to stop seeing environment and economy as enemies. They need to work together, and green jobs and green innovation is how we get our economy moving forward to the future. Thank you.
Appreciate that, James. Jan, what are your thoughts on climate change and how to ensure that Huron County businesses are equipped and the workforce?
Thank you very much. The NDP has a very detailed plan to fight climate crises and win. The climate crisis is putting everything we value at risk, and especially here in Huron-Bruce. First of all, oftentimes the Conservatives do not deny the climate crises, and Liberals act like it's not real, and Trudeau often talks a lot but doesn't act. We plan to cut emissions by more than a half and meet the 1.5 degree target that scientists say is necessary to prevent a catastrophe. We need to make big polluters pay their fair share. Carbon pricing is just one tool in the fight against climate change. Creating hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs, investing in clean energy, energy-efficient, affordable homes, electric transit, zero-emission vehicles, and retrofitting buildings right across the country. Canada is actually the only G7 country whose emissions have gone up since the Paris Agreement. Canada has never met a single emissions reduction goal. I think rating each party's climate plan by economists ends up measuring the wrong things, and it should be climate scientists to be asked to rate party platforms and look beyond only narrow market-based solutions. And looking at farmers who are leaders in, of course, the climate fight is very important here. That's why the NDP will promote sustainable land management techniques and methods to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and help the agricultural sector access low-carbon tools and technology to assist with the adaptation to climate-induced weather changes, as well as pest and invasive species. I also think it's really important to realize that, particularly in the farming community, is that they can act as carbon sinks, and that needs to be recognized in terms of just say carbon taxation, so that they actually can get credit for that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jan. Justin, you had the opportunity for the final comment on this question. What do you think about climate change, and how do we equip Huron County businesses and the workforce?
Thank you. I would first not have any subsidies for green tech. I would not play favorites with your tax money. I would leave the Paris Climate Accord and forge our own path forward. Canada is already looking after the planet, and there's realistically nothing we can do to change the climate. We're already carbon neutral, and therefore we do not need a carbon tax. It only hurts our economy. We already do what we can to manage our waste and recycling effectively, but there is always room for improvement. The resources and technology already exist. We just need to use them more effectively. Canada produces just over 1% of the global emissions, and bringing that to 0% will not change the habits of the world's worst polluters. Locally and provincially, we can plant more trees in urban areas to increase the amount of shade, which would decrease the temperature in those areas in the summer. We could also trees to create more wind blocks, preventing soil erosion. We can also stop raw sewage dumping from the urban and rural areas that are still doing it without chemically treating it first. We can expand our nuclear capabilities for clean energy, just like what Ben was talking about. And some things like floods can be mitigated by not building on floodplains and having sufficiently maintained drainage systems along our shoreline to handle heavier rainfall. Wildfires can be better controlled with efficient forestry and resource management. This includes strategically placed cut lines. These cut through areas of dense forest, reducing it to pasture land. This clearing greatly reduces the fuel available for a spreading wildfire. So while these things won't change the climate, it will help us locally, even if only a little. Thank you.
Thanks again there, Justin, for closing it out on question number 3. Guess what, all? We are halfway through our 6 questions. How are all my candidates feeling? Are you feeling fresh? Still up for some more? You look good. You look good, everyone. Okay, here we go. Round 2, the last 3 questions. Question 4. This carries on from an earlier question. When we look at the pandemic, women and minority groups have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and many continue to stay home to care for young children. What will you or your government do to reduce the burden of child care costs and increase access to child care services so we can recover more quickly from the pandemic? James, I'd like you to start us off.
Great, thanks, Roz. So as I mentioned earlier, a re-elected Liberal government will continue the work to implement a $10 a day universal childcare system. Now this is crucial because we know that women are disproportionately impacted by a lack of childcare. We've seen that for generations, and in 2021, it's time we stop that. So our system, which we signed with 8 provinces and territories, which includes Liberal, Conservative, and NDP governments, have all signed on knowing that this is a good system. We need this system because not only does it make it more affordable up front for families to access, it creates more spaces. And we need to give our children the best start in life while lessening the burden on parents. And the way we do that is in concert with our provincial and territorial partners. We'll spend $27 billion in a new mandate to implement that system across the country. Ontario, regrettably, has not signed on. So if elected your member of parliament, one of my first acts will be to work with the provincial government to get Ontario on board, to get that relief that Ontario families need now. We need to stop lagging behind the other provinces and get on board. Now, the Conservative plan will rip up those agreements. And we see in their costed platform, it will be replaced with a tax credit, up to $6,000. Well, we know the price here in Huron-Bruce far exceeds that. And we need to provide relief all year round. A tax credit doesn't create new spaces. It doesn't make anything more affordable up front for families. And we need to do those things now. It's crucial. It's a crucial family policy. It's a crucial economic policy. And we need to get it done for families in Huron-Bruce. And this will be one of my first acts as your member of parliament, to get to work, to get this done with Ontario.
Thank you very much, James. Jan, again, we talked about childcare and childcare services being really something that stood out in the pandemic. How do we address this?
Well, we know that young families need access to quality, affordable childcare, but today there is an affordability crisis in childcare across the country. Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have had 6 years to act on this essential need. In fact, the Liberals have actually been talking about childcare for decades, but only decided to announce plans months before an election. This drawn-out promise has not ended the fact that families have to give up their careers to care for children. And I must have to say here that back in the 2015 election, that the Trudeau Liberals actually mocked the NDP when we were actually running on $10 a day childcare. So I find it really hypocritical that all of a sudden they find it that they want to provide $10 a day childcare. Having said that, the NDP is absolutely ready to make childcare affordable and available to everyone with a universal $10 a day childcare system. The NDP will create enough childcare spaces, because that's the other thing. It's just not the affordability piece, it's also the spatial piece. And so families don't spend months on a wait list. It's urgent to both protecting existing childcare spaces and creating more. We will take immediate action to save not-for-profit childcare and centers that are at the risk of closure with relief funds to reopen spaces that were lost during COVID-19. And we will do this while ensuring that childcare workers are paid a fair living wage. Thank you very much.
Thanks for those thoughts, Jan. Justin, again, as we look at women and minority groups being affected by the pandemic severely and to look at childcare services, what are your thoughts on childcare services and helping with that recovery?
So my plan is to help childcare is by reducing government involvement. In order to have an impact on people's income levels and their ability to pay for the basics, like childcare, we must first stop taking money from Peter to pay Paul. We need to lower personal income tax, lower business tax, and eliminate the carbon tax. We would not need a strategy to help with childcare if we did not, as a government, take so much money from the paychecks of Canadians to pay for wasteful government programs and the gluttony of foreign aid programs that do not serve humanitarian needs or the corporate bailouts. I would, in essence, make daily life more affordable for Canadians by keeping more of their hard-earned dollars in their own hands to spend as they see fit. And in this case, pay for childcare. Canadians should not have to struggle to pay for necessities because the government has robbed them of so much of their wages. Government programs are a band-aid and not a long-term permanent solution. If you want Canadians to live better lives, you must return the wealth and power back to the people. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Jack, what are your thoughts on childcare services and increased access and, of course, costs? Jack?
Well, yeah, childcare has become a big problem in Canada, and I think a lot of things have become a big problem during the pandemic and the lockdowns. Domestic violence went up, drug overdoses went up, and unfortunately, suicides went up in Canada. We will get parents back to work and end COVID restrictions to help them afford childcare. We will stop giving relief with money that our government does not have, and we will let families afford essentials like childcare by reducing income taxes. But I stand with the People's Party of Canada, and we respect our Constitution, and we reject federal intrusions into provincial jurisdictions. So therefore, and childcare is a provincial jurisdiction. What I would do is put Canada first and put families first and allow them to save as much money into their own pockets and stop letting them fund wasteful foreign aid and the CBC. Keep that money, their tax money, their hard-earned dollars in their pockets to afford the essentials like childcare. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. Ben, round us out on childcare accessibility and costs.
Thanks, Roz. This is a very important question, and you could probably do a whole debate just on this very topic and how important it is. And, through the years, the government has failed to deliver on pharmacare in a meaningful way. I think there's an opportunity with dental care as well. I always vote for that when there's an opportunity. But perhaps likely the most frustrating is on meaningful child care or funding for child care to get people back into the workforce and getting back to in a comfortable way. For many families, there's not much difference between staying at home and not working and having all the headaches and stress and paying child care expenses. I will point out, and I know James always points me out the other way, but I'll do it anyways, the Liberal plan. If you have a child today that's 1 year old, the Liberal plan, your kid will be an SK before you ever see $10 a day child care. So this is for somebody 5 years from now that's going to have a child. Our plan is in effect next year when the next budget is presented. So you can start to see some relief. And the thing our plan does as well is it respects the fact that not everybody works 9 to 5. We have shift workers throughout the country, and they need the support as well. And this will apply to shift workers and their hours that they work. And the other thing we're going to do is present an opportunity to start your maternity benefits 2 months early. And I think that will make a big difference for a family to get prepared for your child and all the different pieces that go into the preparation of having a child. But anybody that has kids and has little kids knows today, and James knows that because I know he has a young child, when you have your kids scheduled to go to child care, daycare, and they're sick and they can't go, nothing screws up your schedule worse than that. And we need to support all the families because it is important to get everybody back to work.
Thank you, Ben. That's question number 4. And I want to thank again everyone who submitted questions, and we grouped them together. And childcare, very important question. Question number 5, we're going to start with you, Jan. Simple question, very to the point. How will you attract more immigrants to the riding to fill job vacancies?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I believe that in so many ways, outside of Indigenous people who are originally here, we're all immigrants. So, you know, our families all immigrated from elsewhere, and we always welcome newcomers. The NDP very much supports immigration to all parts of Canada. And also particularly that we also support programs in terms of for refugees, and right now that is of course Afghanistan. And we would, and our communities are very good at opening up their communities to support refugees coming into their communities. In terms of also immigration, and I'm thinking about also temporary workers here, is that we often, and particularly in our agricultural community, have temporary workers come from elsewhere and work in our different industries, and particularly in agriculture. And one of the things is that oftentimes people who are coming here and they're basically contributing to our communities while they're here, is that they also would like to immigrate. So we're going to make it especially easier for people who have come here as temporary workers, and particularly in our agriculture area where they want to work hard and become Canadian, is that we're going to make it easier for our temporary workers also to immigrate to Canada. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Ben, what are your thoughts on attracting immigrants to the riding to fill job vacancies?
Well, this is very important. It's one of the most important pieces to rebuilding our economy and moving it forward. We have tremendous opportunities in Huron-Bruce. We absolutely do. We have some great innovative minds, some great entrepreneurs here in Huron-Bruce, but there's not enough workers to fill all the positions. And in addition to that, in a lot of ways, our system is broken for bringing in new Canadians. It starts off with labor market opinions and labor market impact assessments. They take way too long. There should be no question that we need more workers, and constantly I hear from business owners, whether it's from abattoirs to restaurants to everything in between, it takes too long. The bureaucrats are not understanding of the need, and we have a huge need here. We have hundreds, thousands unfilled positions up and down the shoreline here, all the way to Walkerton and Exeter and all points in between. So we need to streamline the process, we really do. And in addition to that, Jan mentioned it, with our temporary foreign workers, whether they're farm workers or they work in a factory or any of the other industries we need to give them a clear path to citizenship. PSWs is another huge area we need for long-term care. And if new Canadians want to come here and they want to do those jobs and contribute to our society, come on, we want you. We want you to come here. It's the best. We already know it's the best place to live, so we want to let you know about it, and we want you to come here. And the other thing is, you need a place to live. Everybody knows that. You need a place to live, and we have a major housing crunch here. I know it's around the country, but we have to build more homes. We have to incentivize investors, developers, builders to build apartment buildings so that when our new Canadians come here, they have a nice, safe, warm place to live that's very welcoming. We can do it, but we have to make sure that we have a system that is streamlined and efficient. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. And Jack, would you like to contribute your thoughts?
Yes, of course, and I stand with my party as well on this issue. The primary aim of immigration should be to economically benefit Canadians in Huron-Bruce as well. We want to economically benefit Huron-Bruce. Right now, only 26% of all immigrants that come to Canada every year are directly chosen because they have the right work qualifications to fulfill economic needs. The People's Party of Canada will promote economic immigration, which will help the job market in Canada and across Huron-Bruce. Right now, we also have a housing problem, as Ben mentioned. Mass immigration also inflates housing prices as well. And the Liberal and Conservative governments support unsustainable increasing of annual immigration intake to buy votes. The People's Party of Canada will lower the number of immigrants from around 350,000 to around 150,000, depending on our economic circumstances. And I agree with Ben as well. If you can come and get a job here and be economically beneficial to our country and our riding, come on in. We support that. We want economic immigrants that contribute to our country and our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Justin, what's your perspective on encouraging immigrants to come to the riding to fill job vacancies?
So as Jack was mentioning, we do need to help our economy. And by bringing in workers who can benefit us in those areas are definitely a priority, and they're immediate family only. Temporary workers are definitely great, but again, they're only temporary. So for any shortages where we have to rely on them, what we should do is expedite their application process, similar to, say, Nexus card going through the United States. They've been shown to be beneficial and not abusing the system. We could also educate the needs and benefits of our area. So people who are professional in these areas, we would like you, and the benefits, the wonderful people here, the beautiful shoreline. There's so many wonderful reasons to want to come to Huron-Bruce. And the other thing is the shortage of workers. A lot of people are living on government handouts. What we need to do is incentivize the local people to start working. So for example, all those people on CERB from not working, we need to open up the businesses and get those people back to work. And then that will help lower our unemployment crisis here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin. James, the final word is yours on immigration in the riding and attracting people to job vacancies.
Thanks, Roz. So I largely actually agree with Jan and Ben. It's probably the only times you'll hear us say that tonight, that we are a country of immigrants. Canada, for generations, has been a beacon of hope for people across the world. And we do live in a very beautiful place, an awesome place to live here in Huron-Bruce. So attracting immigrants to here is a great idea. I was at the Multicultural Festival yesterday in Seaforth, and I spoke to a lot of people about Canada's immigration system. And one thing that we have to do in order to attract immigrants to Huron-Bruce and to Canada is we have to tackle systemic racism so that people truly feel welcome when they come here. We need to tackle systemic racism in the healthcare system, and we need to do it in the housing system, in the housing market. One way that disproportionately affects racialized people is in so-called renovictions, where a landlord evicts their tenant to do a renovation and then puts it back on the market for $2,000 a month higher. There's research coming out that disproportionately affects racialized communities. Part of our housing plan is to ban renovictions for everyone. We also do need more housing for everyone, including immigrants. And the national housing strategy that the Liberal Party's put forward is how we would do that, building 1.4 million new homes, giving money to municipalities to build affordable housing, etc. We also need to recognize that we do have a huge need for jobs here in Huron-Bruce. The research is that for every one person looking for a job in agriculture, there are 3 jobs available to them. So we have a huge need. Foreign workers are a great way to meet that need, and we do need a way for them to have a path to citizenship, so that everybody who wants to come to Canada, contribute to Canada, and be part of our diverse, multicultural society has an ability to do so. I'll always stand for that, the Liberal Party will always stand for that, and Canadians will always stand for that. We do best when we look out for each other, and we're going to keep doing that.
Thanks for closing us out there, James. It was brought up earlier, and I just want to echo these comments that the Staysh and Huron-Bruce, we stand on territorial lands, and our first peoples, our original peoples, shared their resources, their knowledge with us, and we seek a new relationship with our original peoples. So thank you again for those who sent in that question. All right, team, we are down to the final question. I just want to commend all of you for staying well within the time limit and being very succinct and thoughtful in your comments. So let's bring it home with question number 6, which you all have foreshadowed each in your own way. It's about housing supply. Guess what? Housing supply issues have had a significant impact on long-term housing affordability. We heard that word again, affordability. What can the federal government do to help with the supply of housing? And if elected, is your government willing to work with provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to address affordability, both for home buyers and renters? James, let's start with you.
Great, thanks, Roz. So in the Liberal government's past mandates, we undertook the National Housing Strategy, which built 100,000 new homes, renovated 300,000 new ones. And we also brought in the first-time home buyers incentive to help young people break into the housing market. We're going to go farther than that in a new mandate. The new National Housing Strategy has many more exciting programs. So we'll build 1.4 million new homes. And while we do that, we have to make sure we're building appropriately and smartly to protect our vital agricultural land as well. We'll provide a fund for municipalities to build affordable housing. We will ban the blind bidding process that currently is in the real estate market. We'll put a national homebuyers bill of rights so that people have a right to a home inspection and it's not part of an offer that can get your offer rejected. We'll bring in a registered down payment account similar to an RSP so that people can save for a down payment tax-free. Goes in tax-free, comes out tax-free. We'll also cool the flipping market by putting a tax on flipping. What we won't do, and what there's been a lot of misinformation shared about, is put a tax on the equity of your home. That's been said clearly by the Prime Minister, it's been clearly said by the minister responsible for this, and actually Minister Hussen came canvassing with me in Walkerton, and I raised it with him directly. And that is not part of the Liberal plan. Again, the Liberal Party will not tax the equity in your home. Your principal residence is not subject to capital gains tax. I hope I've made that very clear, because that is not part of our plan. Our plan will move forward to provide every Canadian with a safe, affordable place to call home. Because in a G7 country like Canada, housing is a vital piece of everyday life for everyone. We're going to keep going forward on that, building on the progress we've made, and make even more as part of our ambitious plan to move Canada forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Jan, over to you. Housing affordability, housing supply, how do we crack this nut?
Well, we all know here is that housing crises in our housing market needs a lot of moderating. This is because big money investors are driving up the cost of houses. No one can win a bidding war against investors with deep pockets who are looking to turn a profit and not build a neighborhood. To help put an end to the speculation that is actually fueling our high housing costs, we need to possibly, at this point, work at, I just want to make sure I have this, is that we need to make sure that all the home that has been financially out of reach of many, and that there are also not only housing options to buy homes, but also rental options are next to impossible to find. Huron-Bruce and all of Canada is under this kind of crisis. An NDP government will work to make sure everyone can afford a place to call home. We will do this by creating 500,000 units of quality affordable housing. For those who need help paying the rent, the NDP will also provide 5,000 a year in rental supports for families. Now, for those who want to buy a home, we will reintroduce 30-year term mortgages on entry-level homes for first-time home buyers. This will allow for smaller monthly payments, which is really important, freeing up funds to help make ends meet for young families. We'll also give people a hand with closing costs by doubling the home buyer's tax credit for $1,500. And I have to also say that when we're talking about having a place to call home, is that we also have a homeless crisis that has happened in Canada. And I think that we would be remiss if we didn't actually include that here, as there's many people who are so precariously housed that they can just not even, or do not have enough income to be able to actually afford any rent, and that the NDP is coming up with a national homeless strategy. And I think it's very important that we also look at that and strategize, because I can tell you that we're a rich country and no one should be sleeping on the street. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Jan. Justin, again, a hot button topic. It's housing affordability, it's supply. What's your perspective?
So I would say Canada needs to return our focus to Canadians. This is especially important regarding affordable housing and food security. As our nation's population increases, so too does the demand for affordable housing. Our current efforts simply do not meet the unreasonable demand placed on our municipalities by the Liberal government's immigration quotas. We must first better manage the flow of immigrants into our country, accepting only those individuals and their immediate families who economically benefit Canada. Reducing the demand for homes reduces the cost of buying those homes. We need to focus our efforts on encouraging the development of affordably priced, smaller, and more energy efficient homes. We should not be encouraging the construction of condominiums selling for $1 million when we can't even meet the basic housing demands of those living or riding, earning at or just above minimum wage. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Ben, it's one of the most reported on crises, housing, affordability, and supply. What say you?
It definitely is definitely one of the top issues in Huron-Bruce and around the country. It doesn't matter if you're a first-time home buyer or a senior trying to figure out your next move when you sell your family home and make your next move. Any national housing strategy, whether it's for affordable housing, rent to income, etc., needs to have a rural focus. And I believe that that's been lost the last 6 years, in my own opinion. And we need to have a rural lens, a rural focus. I can remember, I think that term came out of Huron County, actually, the rural lens. And we need to have that because too often we miss out on funding partnerships with the county and municipalities to build housing inventory. But with family households, family homes, apartments, the federal program, our program that's in our platform, there are 37,000 federal building and lands across the country. We're going to take 15% of those out and we're going to directly apply them to housing stock, housing inventory. The great thing about that is it will slow down urban sprawl. We know the OFA and many other farm groups have identified this as a major issue going forward. A program like that will focus on some of the urban and semi-urban areas to limit the sprawl. In addition to that, we've talked a lot tonight about different ways to encourage building, to encourage housing, whether it's rural or in the urban areas, and as well incentivize builders, investors, developers to come to our area to do a good mix of housing, but definitely implement apartments and rental units that are acceptable to today's standards. And as well, Jan touched on it, we need to address the homeless issue, but we also need to enhance the 7 and 10 year rates and make that a more competitive, attractive market, and also lengthen out the amortization periods. People that bought a home 20 years ago for their first home could make it work and pay it off in 25 years.
Thanks,
maybe.
Ben.
Now it's really out of limit if your first home's $500,000 or $600,000.
Okay, appreciate that. And Jack, you have the distinct honor of finishing up with the last comment of the last question before we go to closing comments. Jack, your thoughts on housing affordability?
Great, thanks, Roz. And yeah, this is a really serious issue for all Canadians as we're all looking for housing. The housing market has become overheated, and the People's Party of Canada government will cool down the market. Over the past decades, the federal government has spent billions of dollars and created various bureaucratic programs to make housing more affordable, with no results. Overall inflation has become a major problem in every sector of our country's economy, and it's a consequence of inflationary monetary policy, which is simply the Bank of Canada printing too much money in order to fund Trudeau's government gigantic deficits. Housing is primarily a provincial or a local responsibility. Ottawa's involvement over the years has only resulted in distorting the housing market. There is nothing the federal government can do to change provincial or municipal zoning, but it can stop contributing to the overheating housing market in different ways. The People's Party of Canada government will modify the Bank of Canada's inflation target from 2% to 0%, which will cool down inflation in all sectors, not only the housing sector. We will work with provinces as well to curb speculation and money laundering by foreign non-resident buyers in Canada's land and in Canada's housing markets, which will help all Canadians, no matter their circumstance, afford housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. A lot of passion in everyone's response to that question. We can tell it's a really important question. Thanks for everyone who submitted that one. Well, guess what? We are now down to closing comments, and each candidate will have 5 minutes for closing statements. We're going to reverse the order that we began with. And candidates, this is your final opportunity tonight to pitch why you deserve our viewers' votes. And Jack, you are the youngest candidate perhaps in Canada running. So we are going to start with you. Jack Stecho, the People's Party of Canada. Jack?
Great. I just wanted to take an opportunity again to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this event, and Raj, and Roz for the questions. In the past 18 months, Canadians have been through the most frontal attacks against our freedom, our prosperity, and our rights. It's time for the people of Huron-Bruce to choose something different. Without the PPC, no federal party would be speaking out against many issues that we are facing today, including lockdowns, vaccine passports, unsustainable mass immigration, online censorship, carbon taxes, debt, inflation, and globalism. We are the party for the people. We are the party for freedom, which has become likely the biggest issue in this election. We are drawing supporters from every party, single issue supporters especially, that want their freedom as a Canadian back. I am prepared to become your voice in Ottawa and truly make a difference. Maxime Bernier is ready to lead our country. Maxime Bernier does not flip-flop on issues. Maxime Bernier says one thing, he means it, and he stands by it. Ben has voted twice against Aaron O'Toole to be the Conservative leader. And I believe a lot of that reason is because of his constant saying something to get elected and then changing his mind, as we have seen him do this campaign alone with 3 major issues: the gun laws, vaccine passports, as he's implementing a national vaccine certificate, and the biggest one is carbon taxes, which will cost Canadians $1 billion added up. Canadians will be contributing lots of money to the carbon tax. Vote for your values. Don't vote for something to protect something worse from happening. We did that here in Ontario in the last provincial election, and we ended up with Doug Ford, the so-called Conservative, who continually imposed lockdowns that hurt Ontarians in many different ways through postponements of surgeries, life-saving surgeries, drug overdoses, suicide, domestic violence, and stress-related illnesses. It's time to get Canada back on track. We will not allow our government to control our livelihoods and take away our livelihoods as Canadians. If you like something you heard tonight, I encourage you to visit thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca and potentially join and vote for the fastest growing party in Canada's history. And again, I want to thank you for listening, and I'm grateful to be a part of this debate, as it is a very crucial part of our democratic process. It's an amazing country of Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you for being part of tonight's debate. We much appreciate that. We're going to turn now to our Conservative incumbent, Ben Lobb.
Thanks very much, Roz. I hope everybody at home tonight enjoyed the debate. It was a good debate and a lot of good discussion and topics were covered. I'd like to thank the Huron Chamber for doing all the work, a lot of the work, to put this important debate on. I know it was tough to put on in pandemic times and with a venue change and many other things. So thank you to Heather and Roz and Mark, and as well Faux for putting this all together in very short order. And if you could see it at home, folks, it's very, very impressive. We are at a point in time. We are at a point in time where we've had an unnecessary election called. We had an election called in the summertime during a pandemic. And if I've heard one thing, door knocking, day in and day out, meeting with residents in Huron-Bruce, it is their frustration with the timing of the election, which also led to the unfortunate humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, and with Afghan Canadians being left behind at the embassy in Kabul. A lot of issues that have occurred in the last 18 months, a lot of issues that have occurred in the last 6 years. Do we want to continue to move forward with Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party while they spin their wheels on the future of Canada? A new Conservative government will work with Canadians to build a better Canada, a more prosperous Canada. We will invest in rural infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, bridges, community centers, and high-speed internet to every home by 2025. We'll take immediate action to help the hardest hit sectors. We'll rebuild Main Street by assisting small business and providing incentives to invest in, rebuild, and start new businesses. We'll create opportunities in all sectors of the economy, in all parts of the country. It's a plan to secure Canada's future and the recovery from the pandemic, to get the economy back on track, to bring jobs back, and to get spending under control. Tackle high prices. We've talked about it tonight. High home prices, but also every other thing that you would have on your monthly bills at home. We need to get those under control. We need to continue to fight inflation. We need to stop the money printing at the Bank of Canada. And we need to get serious about mental health, the mental health crisis in our country. And we're going to increase health transfers to the provinces to continue to deliver the vital frontline healthcare services that our universal healthcare system provides. To secure our independence from other countries for the things we need in an emergency. I'd like to thank all the other candidates that are here today in studio, tonight in studio, and for those that are at home on Zoom. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being a great competitor in the debates. It was a very good debate and positive, no personal attacks, and I think that's to be commended by all candidates. I hope the viewers at home enjoyed the debate, and I'd ask you on September 20th to vote Conservative, vote Ben Lobb. Have a great evening.
Ben, thank you very much for your participation tonight. Justin is the independent candidate. Justin, what are your final thoughts?
All right, so first, I would like to thank everyone for putting together tonight's debate, for everyone at home watching this, and for the candidates to be a part of tonight. We can finally all be together for once. And good luck during the election. For too long, Canada has been voting for the lesser of the evils when it comes to election time, because many people end up detesting the party in power and then voting for the other main party just to get them out, and repeating the process over and over and over and over and expecting different results. Voting for a lesser evil is still voting for evil. The party leader decides what he or she wants the party direction to go, and everyone either has to follow suit or risk being kicked out. For example, the Conservative Party kicked their Yukon candidate, Jonas Smith, out of the party because of his views on the COVID vaccine only 3 days before this election. Or the Liberal Party that kicked out Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott. As an independent candidate, I will never have to worry about having to toe the party line or risk my position, because I will only have you, the constituents, to answer to. And I will never have to try to spin a story to convince everyone that something is good, even if I don't think it is, or explain flip-flopping on a topic. Election reform, carbon tax, reversing the order in council readily come to mind. I can be honest and give you my opinion without fear. How can a member of parliament who is supposed to be your voice in Ottawa do his or her job properly if there's a risk they might be kicked out of the party for wrong think? I think that's a huge conflict at your expense. An independent has the flexibility that no one else has in fighting for the people, because while everyone else has to stick to their platform, I am able to get your feedback and fight for that. No more having Ottawa dictating to you. How many people want to pay more for gas and groceries? So why are we paying more? Because the parties believe in making things more expensive for everyone with their high spending and high taxes, just like the carbon tax is one small example. I won't be a paper candidate who hasn't been present and doesn't show up for even most online debates. The election process is about representation and participation. Some parties seem to be nominating paper candidates and not people willing to fight for what's right, like I am. I won't be an MP who serves silently in the background while collecting a six-figure income. I can't stand by while we're being let down by the government. I won't make promises to serve all Canadians and then help only those I deem worthy of support after I'm elected. I will stand up for your rights and freedoms now and in Ottawa. This election, vote Justin Smith Independent and help me to end the two-party political rule in Canada, and to see everything that an independent can fight for you. Check out my website at justinlsmith.ca. Thank you very much and have a good evening. God bless.
Thank you, Justin. And thank you for your contribution this evening, Justin. James, we now turn to you. James Rice is the Liberal candidate with his closing thoughts.
Thank you, Roz, and I echo everybody else's comments in thanking those who put on the debate tonight. It's crucial for our electorate to be able to see what their options are when they vote. And in this election, we really see what our options are. So I've also heard some issues with the timing of the election. I'm not going to pretend that that's not an issue. But my question is, what are the other parties so afraid of? Why should power be centralized in Ottawa? When we were voting in 2019, how the government handles a pandemic and comes out of it was not on your mind. A lot of things have changed since then, and you have drastically different options for the Canada you want afterwards. So that's why we're taking it to you. Because although you have a member of parliament, although we have a parliament, although we have a prime minister, sometimes we forget that our boss is you. Everybody watching at home and the voters in Huron-Bruce and across Canada. We're taking it to you to see what you want your country to look like. And I'm proud that we live in a democracy where that's what government's instinct is to do. We have drastically different options, as I mentioned, of what we want for Canada. We have the Conservatives who will rig the system for the wealthy, slash a lot of important social progress we've made. And we have the NDP who will stand by their side while they do that, and have a plan where they say is detailed, but read it and draw your own conclusion. We need a positive voice back in Ottawa. We need a positive government back in Ottawa. When we're talking about progressive policies, moving our country forward, the proof is in the pudding when we talk about that. We've supported people since 2015 as a government because we know that Canada is at its best when we look out for each other and when we provide for each other. And that's true more than anywhere here in Huron-Bruce. When they say it takes a village to raise a child, that's literally true in my experience. And that's what's so great about Canada and so great about our community, that we have that philosophy, that we're better when we take care of each other. I wholeheartedly believe that. The Liberal Party wholeheartedly believes that. And that's the philosophy we'll take forward should you give us another mandate to govern this great country. As has been said, we need a rural lens to make sure that our thoughts and views are represented to government. We need an ambitious member of parliament that will stand up for rural Canada and stand up for Huron-Bruce. When we talk about various major issues like climate change, housing policy, childcare policy, and everything else, what works in downtown Toronto doesn't always work here. We need a strong advocate for our community to get our unique needs and perspectives for our small towns and communities on the front burner for government when they're making decisions. We haven't had that, but we need that again. As you know by now, I'm a lawyer professionally. My community becomes my client. I've been advocating for people my whole life. From myself and my sisters as we're going through the child welfare system, and we have to advocate to social workers, systems, judges, and courts, I was there. When Ontario needs to rewrite a child welfare legislation to bring us into the modern system, I was there. When victims of crime who need understanding and someone to speak for them, I was there. And when Huron-Bruce needs an ambitious member of parliament to get results for them and bring what works here, I'll be there. Silence is no longer an answer for inaction. I won't be silenced, and I won't be silent. I will get you results. Get your voice back in Ottawa, vote James Rice on September 20th, and vote for the Liberal Party for your next government. There's too much at stake in this election to move backwards. We can't afford to bring in two-tier healthcare system. We can't afford a prime minister who will flip-flop whenever he thinks it's popular. We can't afford a government that is focused on the rich or a government that's not focused on much of anything but being elected. We need a government that's in it to make a positive impact on the lives of Canadians. And that's what you get with Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. And that's what you get with James Rice as your member of parliament. So on September 20th, I ask for your trust to send me to Ottawa and fight for you. Thanks, everyone.
James, thank you very much for tonight and your participation. Jan, you get to round us out and bring us home with your closing comments. Jan Johnstone with the NDP.
Friends, New Democrats are different because we are working people. For our whole history, we have fought for better working conditions and standards that lift a real difference to Canadian families, and that setting Canadians up for success in the work world is important to their future, and of course it benefits all of us. New ways of thinking can shape the recovery from the COVID-19 crises and help make our economy fair and deliver the results we all want. What we have seen for the past 6 years is a Liberal Prime Minister who loves to say the right things, to promise to address the issues that that really matter to Canadians with no intention of delivering them. Liberals have been promising pharmacare and childcare for decades. In fact, Justin Trudeau called a snap election at the beginning of the fourth wave of the pandemic. And the things he couldn't even actually explain why he was calling this election and the importance of it. And things he was running on, he had the support of the NDP. So $10 a day childcare, which the NDP has been advocating for forever. In other areas. So in fact, he actually couldn't explain it, and people just really saw this as a Trudeau vanity election. And another example of that, in May of 2020, and that was about 50 months ago, Jagmeet Singh called on Justin Trudeau to introduce paid sick leave. He said, provinces need to look at the way to deliver sick leave directly through employers, which the federal government can't do. Mr. Trudeau waited until just August of this year to suddenly admit that the federal can indeed fund sick leave. This is the kind of cynical politics that we must end. We have a conservative leader who wants to convince you that he's dragging his party kicking and screaming into the 21st century, all the while the majority of his caucus contradict him on key social issues every day, and he continues to talk about privatizing our healthcare system, creating a system where the rich can pay to jump the line. Jagmeet Singh and the NDP have a record of fighting for you. Instead of protecting billion-dollar companies that profited off the pandemic but paid no tax, they fought for you and your family, pushing the Liberal government on supports that help regular Canadians and small businesses get through the pandemic. On September 20th, I hope you will consider electing me as your MP so that I can fight for you every single day. That is my pledge to you today. Thank you.
Jan, thank you very much for the final comments. Well, everyone, that is our debate for tonight. I want to thank all the candidates for your participation, your civility, your perspectives and diversities of views, and of course, your spirit. And to our viewers, thanks for spending time with us so that you can be informed for your decision on September 20th. And of course, let's thank the Huron Chamber of Commerce. Don't forget to join us on September 20th here at the Staysh and on Channel 1 on Hurontel and Hay Communications. We will be bringing you live results, and you never know who might pop in. Maybe these 5, you just never know. I'm Roz Elliott. On behalf of the station Faux Pop Media, we are hyper local for you always, and now it's my pleasure to turn it back to our host, Mike Woodward.
Thanks, Roz. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody at home, Roz Elliott, one of the best moderators we've ever had. Thank you to all our candidates. This was very eye-opening. This is what we need to move democracy forward. Thank you for coming. Thank you to Faux Pop Studio, the Staysh, Huron Perth, Association of Realtors, and Lakeshore United Church. Thank you to our Chamber Advocate sponsors, Libro Credit Union and Bruce Power. Also, our friends sponsors, Artex Signs and Graphics, and 920 CKNX. Thank you to our venue, Faux Pop Station again, and all its volunteers, and to Sandra Bilson of Toastmasters for the timing of the event. Good night to everyone at home. Thank you for watching on our website, on our Facebook page, and on Channel 1.